Welcome to NFL Live, where we start today with breaking news. Adam Schefter, what is it?
Dan, Will Anderson is now the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, reaching agreement today on a 3-year, $150 million extension that raises the bar for all non-quarterbacks across the league. Anderson is somebody that the Texans obviously prioritized in keeping. They already had picked up his 5th-year option. He's 24, will turn 25 this September, and the Houston Texans have locked him in for 3 additional years, meaning he's contractually tied to Houston for the next 5 years. One of the most underrated players in all of football, but no longer paid like one. The highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history is now Will Anderson.
Mina, when we last saw Will Anderson on a football field, he was dominating the New England Patriots in what turned out to be a playoff loss for Houston. Highest paid non-quarterback in the league. What is it that makes him good enough to be that?
I mean, he's such a complete player, but the pass rush production speaks for itself. Since coming into the league in 2023, he ranks 3rd amongst all pass rushers, behind only Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett in ESPN's pass rush win rate metric. He has created 91 interceptions in that time with his pressures on the quarterback, by the way. So getting this deal done was a no-brainer for, a high-character, productive player like Anderson. And, of course, that 4-man rush is the identity of this Texans team. I mean, you alluded to their performance in the playoffs. It is what the whole identity of that defense is built around. I will say, though, now the Texans have the highest-paid player and Danielle Hunter, the 5th highest paid player on a much shorter term deal. So they need to start finding value, I believe, on the defensive line. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they take a swing on a pass rusher because of how much they're expending now at the position for some depth and future potential. But yeah, as far as Anderson goes, no brainer, not very much to discuss, to be honest.
That's interesting, because you'd think with all this committed to the pass rush, maybe we don't have to watch them for defensive line in the draft, which, by the way, is in 6 days from right now.
Can't wait.
How do you think, if at all, this affects Houston's approach next week?
Couple notes here. First of all, this deal is very much in line with Houston's preferred contract ethos, right? This is a first-round pick. They recently picked up the 5th-year option for Will Anderson, which meant that he has 2 more years on the existing rookie deal. You tack on 3 years at record-setting money. This is the same thing they did last offseason with cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. The player, of course, becomes the highest-paid player at his position. In the case of Will Anderson, the highest-paid non-quarterback ever. Meanwhile, for the team, there's already 2 years that they have baked into this deal, so it's more palatable from a salary cap standpoint. As for the draft, guys, I think that, and Mina's correct, maybe pass rush could be on the radar a little bit. I think it underscores just sort of a bigger picture point for Houston. This is a problem. It's a good problem that other teams around the NFL have recently faced. The Seahawks might be facing it right now. I think the Lions have faced this past year or so. You got a lot of good players. You better absolutely nail the NFL draft, because the difference between sustaining that success and potentially having a regression like the Lions had this past year is if you don't nail the draft, the margin just becomes so much thinner for your roster depth and roster attrition. So every team got to nail the draft. Feels especially important for a Houston team because of how well they have drafted up to this point.
Right. And Field, of course, they're paying Danielle Hunter. They're paying Will Anderson. You got to find some rookies to hit on those rookie contracts to fill out that roster on friendlier contracts. What's also interesting about the Will Anderson contract is he also became the 2nd defensive player to have a no-trade clause included in his contract. Interestingly enough, Nicole Lynn from Clutch Sports, she does both deals for both players. Myles Garrett, a no-trade clause. Will Anderson, a no-trade clause. That's been rare for defensive players. Now we've seen that introduced. The chances are over time, when there's a defensive player who's a superstar, who has leverage, he may want that no-trade clause that we've now seen introduced into a couple of defensive players' contracts.
So Will Anderson, Myles Garrett may be paying it forward a little bit for some big-time defensive players who will get big-time contracts in the future. Let's get to some more top stories around the NFL today with our own Adam Schefter. Schefter, start with what's going on with Dexter Lawrence and the Giants.
Well, this isn't a standoff right now. This is a player who simply wants out, Dan, and there's a real question as to whether the Giants will trade him. They'd rather not, but it certainly feels like as the draft gets closer that a trade is more and more possible for Dexter Lawrence. We'll see if there's a team that's willing to step up and give up at least a first-round pick. That's what I said, at least a first-round pick to get Dexter Lawrence out of New York. Meanwhile, Jacoby Brissett has been a no-show at the Cardinals' off-season workout program. As Michael LaFleur takes over as the new head coach, Brissett is not there. He's seeking a contract extension. He's in the final year of a contract that's scheduled to pay him under $10 million. He wants a contract more in line with starting quarterback money. And the 4 o'clock deadline, the trade went down today.
Yeah.
We saw the Falcons trading defensive tackle Rook Ororo to the Jaguars in exchange for Mason Smith. The rare swap of players at the same position, but both teams make that trade here to exchange defensive tackles, and both sides looking to fortify that particular spot. And earlier today, the Arizona State wide receiver Jordan Tyson, projected as a first-round draft pick, finally worked out for teams today out at Arizona State. He had missed time during the combine due to injury. There were, by my estimation, at least 18 NFL teams in attendance to see what just might be the most talented wide receiver in this draft, to form some final opinions with the NFL draft now under 1 week away.
And that's really big. The most talented wide receiver. A lot of people think he's the best wide receiver in this year's draft, but he does come with some health concerns left over from college. How big a deal do you think that is and should be for teams interested in drafting him?
I'll get to that in one moment. But shout out Shefty for nailing Ruka-Ro-Ro-Ro right there.
That's
that
right.
was big time, Shefty. I'm proud of you for that. As it pertains to Jordan Tyson, it's not a singular injury that teams have been concerned about. It's the sheer volume of injuries that teams that were skeptical have been concerned about. I'll say this. I've remained steadfast in my belief since probably the beginning of the fall. It's a top 10 player in the class. He's clearly the most explosive receiver in the class. He's the best threat at all 3 levels of the field. You want to throw it down deep? He'll jump work after the catch. He'll do that. You want to find him in the intermediate passing game? He can do that as well. Today was an important day, and there were multiple general managers that were there at this workout as well, a reflection of just how high this player could go. I know that opinions have varied on Jordan Tyson throughout the pre-draft process. I have believed throughout this pre-draft process, him and Carnell Tate are right there, neck and neck, out of Ohio State. Carnell Tate is, and it's really just a matter of what's your flavor of wide receiver, Mina, as opposed to one of these guys being leaps and bounds better than the other player.
Yeah, if I had to summarize why Tyson's ceiling is so high, why teams are so intrigued by him despite the injury history, I would say it's this. His movement abilities, the suddenness and explosivity at his size, 6'2", are very rare. Field, you talked about him being a threat at all 3 levels, but to me, where he shines the most is something that NFL teams largely need the most, and it's those intermediate area parts of the field, that 10 to 20-yard range. He leads all college receivers in receptions over the last 2 years. He has the twitch and body control on out-breaking routes there, and the toughness to work the middle of the field on in-breaking routes. Your digs, for example, that we see being such a fundamental part of NFL offenses right now. So when I think about teams like the Saints, the Chiefs, or the Rams at 13, he makes sense for all of those teams. The question, of course, is just their appetite for risk with the injuries.
Shefty?
And you bring up the injuries, Mina, and there are teams that have said that if Jordan Tyson did not have the injury history that he did, on talent alone, on physical stature alone, you would be looking at a top 5 pick in this draft. But because of some of the injuries that he's had to his knee, his hamstring, his shoulder, whatever it may be, that obviously raised the questions that have come up here in the pre-draft process, causing teams to take a long, hard look at Jordan Tyson, for all those teams to be in attendance today, and for all of them to have to make a decision on a player who does have top 5 ability.
Getting close to decision time on Jordan Tyson and all these guys, as I mentioned, 6 days away from the NFL draft. As for today, we are just getting started on NFL Live. Texas Tech edge rusher David Bailey has gained a lot of steam lately as a possibility for the Jets, who have the number 2 pick overall. Field is going to tell you why he would be a perfect match for New York. Plus, there's been some buzz around the possibility of the Cowboys trading up to get Sonny Styles. Could Jerry Jones make a move like that? Back on NFL Live with Adam Schefter. Adam, we had some news this week regarding the Jets and prospect David Bailey. What can you tell us there?
Dan, they canceled a visit with the player that some have projected to go number 2, feeling that they had enough information on him already. Now, there are a couple of ways to look at that. You could say, well, they have enough information. They are very comfortable moving ahead and drafting him, or they know they're moving ahead in a different direction, which many presume would be Arvell Reese, and there's no need to make David Bailey take an extra trip to New York. Nevertheless, whichever one was the reason that they decided to cancel the visit, there was no longer an added visit between the two sides. Bailey did not make the trip to New York, and the Jets are now slated to pick number 2 Thursday night.
This is the time of year where we're looking for any kind of clue we can possibly get.
Yeah.
Right? We know who's going number 1. Now we need to know who's going number 2. What do you make of this bit of news? Is it any indication of anything the Jets might be thinking? Thanks.
Who knows, Graz? Yeah, I would say this. My belief for the past few months has been that I lean towards, my lean for the past few months, I should say, has been David Bailey over Arvell Reese at pick number 2 for the New York Jets. I've also had those players ranked right next to each other throughout the pre-draft process. Comes down to the question that the Jets have to ask themselves. If they're trying to line up and win a game tomorrow and add a pass rusher that is going to be an effective pass rusher at the NFL level, David Bailey is the pick, right? He fits schematically what they want to do, even with some of the players they have added this offseason to pass rush. If they're looking for the guy who has a higher chance to be an entire shapeshifter for your defense, that just may not happen to the passer 97 times last year. That's an incredibly low number to be banking on a player at the number 2 overall pick as a pass rusher. Am I ruling it out? By no means. But if you're looking for the guy who I think has a comparable but lower ceiling, but to me a higher floor, I think it's David Bailey.
So we think the Jets at number 2 looking defense, somebody who can rush the passer, whether it's a ready-made or a speculative play there. Mina, the Jets also pick at number 16 in the first round of this year's draft. So what other areas of their team should they be looking to build up?
Yeah, it would be shocking if they don't go edge at 2, and I would also be shocked if they don't go receiver at 16. That seems to be the most common pick for New York for a reason. They'll have, I think, an interesting selection of players. If I'm a Jets fan, or if I'm the Jets organization, my hope is that the USC wide receiver, Mekhi Lemon, is there, and Garrett Wilson, who can work all 3 levels of the field, contested catch ability. And there's an opportunity, I think, for a secondary wide receiver who can play inside, outside, work the slot, get you yards after the catch. Did it sound like I'm describing Mekhi Lemon? Because I am. I just think it's a perfect complement to Garrett Wilson's skill set, and you would be setting the table for the quarterback you're drafting next year, walking into an improved situation in New York.
Mina, yesterday you said the Browns wide receiver, offensive tackle. Today we have the Jets pass rusher, wide receiver. That seems to be the prevailing thinking around the league. But the one thing that I've heard recently is, could the Jets at 16 go with a cornerback, go with a defensive back? Would that be interesting? Is there a cornerback there that's even worthy of taking at number 16? That also would be a question right now. So I don't know. And I don't know that Mekhi Lemon would be there. The interesting thing about Mekhi Lemon is I've heard some teams say to me, here's a guy that we think is falling, that may be around a little bit longer than people are expecting. And then I've had other people say, well, this is Amon-Ra, and he's worthy of a top 10 pick. So, again, this is going to be the case with a lot of these prospects here leading to Thursday night. Taste is in the eye of the beholder, and we'll see how these teams value each player. Yes, I agree with the Jets. Edge rusher, potential wide receiver. Let's not rule out a cornerback either.
Certainly can't rule out a cornerback for a team that did not have a single interception at all in the 2025 season. I don't think the fans would dispute if they went that direction. New on NFL Live today, Pittsburgh Steelers offensive coordinator Brian Angelico met with the media. Here's what he had to say.
You'll hear Coach McCarthy say this all the time, and this is Coach's philosophy. Everything goes through the quarterback, and like it will here, and like it has through Coach McCarthy's entire time of coaching. And that's really all that it is. And you try to get concepts that they're comfortable with. And that's, Coach McCarthy will say it, if the quarterback's not comfortable with something, then we're not going to do it.
That's a great plan. As our Steelers reporter, Brooke Pryor, joins us now. My question to you, Brooke, is who's the quarterback?
Isn't that everyone's question? They would like it to be Aaron Rodgers, right? That's kind of been the prevailing thought, that he is going to end up being the quarterback. But right now, he's still a free agent. And their plan B appears to be Will Howard. And I go back to something that Cam Hayward said earlier today on the Rich Eisen show, where he said, look, everybody wants Aaron back. But if we go in a direction where it's Will, we feel pretty confident. Will Howard has drawn raves from Mike McCarthy, from Brian Angelico earlier today. And I also think about what Mike McCarthy said to us at the NFL annual meetings, where he said, look, if he was drafting the year that Will Howard came out last year, Will Howard would not have been around in the 6th round. He said when he watched the college football playoff on his television set, that he just jumped off the screen. So maybe that's because he needs to adjust the dial on that television set. But they do really like Will Howard. They've brought in a number of mid-round quarterbacks to visit in Pittsburgh, but Will Howard seems to be their best option as a plan B.
It's interesting when you mention the idea of Will Howard, who admittedly under a different coaching staff lasted until the 6th round, reminds me a little bit of the first year after Tom Brady in New England, where for the first 3 or 4 months of the offseason, it was Jared Stidham's going to be the guy, have a lot of confidence in him. And then sometime in June, Shefty and the late, great Chris Mortensen broke the news that Cam Newton was signing a 1-year contract with the Patriots. Actions, of course, speak louder than words. I still think this team, if Aaron Rodgers is unsigned by 6 days from right now, has to be thinking long and hard about at least a mid-round quarterback option. I still think Carson Beck and Garrett Nussmeier are the most likely players to go on day 2 of the quarterbacks. I'm in the camp that Ty Simpson finds his way into day 1. I just would have a hard time going into even rookie minicamp with Will Howard as my presumptive starter for a team that has no interest in bottoming out, right? Pittsburgh wants to stay on the treadmill. They like to get to a couple levels higher than where they have been recently. But this team is, as you know better than anybody, Brooke, they don't want to go 4-13 and get their quarterback of the future next year. They want to find a way to stay afloat.
But, Brooke, you mentioned they have had some guys in to visit that they might be able to look at in those middle rounds, maybe add to the mix in case Aaron Rodgers decides to what? Hang him up, I guess, and not rejoin the Steelers. We, of course, as has become off-season tradition, await news on Aaron Rodgers. Still to come today on NFL Live, Jaden Daniels and the Commanders are looking to bounce back. Ohio State linebacker Sonny Styles sure to be a top pick in next week's real draft, as he was in Mel Kiper's most recent mock draft. This one has Mel has the Cowboys trading up to get Sonny Styles. Cowboys sending picks 12 and 20 in the first round to the Browns in exchange for picks 6 and 39, which is an early second-round pick. That's what Mel was projecting in his latest mock. Here's what Cleveland Browns GM Andrew Berry had to say yesterday about the 6th pick.
I'd go back to, what I've said in the past, like our mindset, going into the draft, with our most valuable asset isn't about, hey, just trade it away or trade it. It's maximizing the asset. And that can at different times take different forms. It can be selecting a player. It could be trading it for a veteran. It could be trading down. It could be trading up. And so, we will continue to work through all those, possibilities. Up until really we get on the clock on Thursday night. We're working through a number of different scenarios at this point.
All right, so Adam, that certainly makes it sound as if the Browns could be open for business if someone wanted to trade up to pick number 6. As it pertains to what Mel suggested in his mock, any signs for you pointing toward Dallas making that kind of move?
Well, here's the thing. I think the Cowboys would have an interest in trading up, but from what I understand and talking to teams, the Cowboys have been very hesitant, and it's been a non-starter to include pick number 20 in those trade talks. So for Dallas to go up, they're going to have to move off that. And again, I think they're willing to offer other picks to come up in the draft. They're willing to offer 12 and other compensation. But so far, to date, to my understanding, they've been unwilling to part with pick 20 as well. Now, will that change as we get into Thursday night? Maybe it depends on who's on the board. Maybe it won't change at all. But that has been, I think, one of the big holdups to now, to where talks have not intensified as much as you would think that they might, because Dallas wants to hold on to pick number 20.
I've got good news for Dallas fans, or bad news for Dallas fans, depending on how you feel about the idea of a trade-up. If you're not including 20, it's probably not going to happen, because let's work through some of the Cowboys' other draft capital they have this year that's been encumbered. They have already made some moves involving their second-round pick. They no longer own that. That belongs to the New York Jets, number 44 overall. They have pick number 92. That's from the Osi Odigizua trade to San Francisco. Their first-round pick next year is, of course, encumbered because that was part of a deal they also made with the New York Jets for Quinnen Williams. So it's going to be very difficult if you are the Cowboys to move up if you're reticent to include pick number 20. The only thing that I would add, and Shefty may have conflicting intel on this, is one thing that I've heard from teams about the concept of making trades this year is that because this draft class is not as strong as some of our recent classes, 2024 is a good example of a very strong recent class. We have seen teams pay gigantic premiums to move up. I don't know that we're going to see teams reasonably asking for that same level of premium in this year's draft. I'm not saying that the Cowboys are guaranteed to get a deal done by not including 20, but I have heard teams saying to themselves, don't let very good be the enemy of perfect as it pertains to a negotiation.
Yeah. Adam, you look like you had something to say.
The way that I've talked about it with some teams is it almost feels like picks this year could be on sale to a certain extent. 20 off. Now, that doesn't mean that trades are going to get done, but I don't know that teams are going to wind up paying the same prices they have in other years to move up. We're used to seeing some hauls for draft picks. Maybe it won't be the same price this year for a team to move up in the first round of Thursday night's draft to get the player they want. Again, we've seen 5 draft day trades in each of the past 2 years. It doesn't sound like we'll get that going in, despite what Brett Veach, the Chiefs general manager, thinks. But maybe these picks are discounted enough on Thursday night that there's a little bit more wheeling and dealing than some people think.
That's why it's interesting, Mina, in Mel's proposed trade, he had Dallas getting back a high second rounder, which is big. Because if they trade 12 and 20 to move up for Sonny Styles, they don't pick again till the 90s, till the third round on Friday night. Conceptually, the idea of Dallas making a big move like that to get into that mix for a player like Sonny Styles, do you like it?
I mean, I have to laugh a little bit because before the Combine, Field and I were talking about Dallas getting Sonny Styles staying put at 12. And I was like, that is a perfect fit. It's exactly what they need. And then the Combine happened, and now it feels absolutely impossible. I would not hate it if I'm a Cowboys fan, but only depending on how they feel the draft is going to shake out, which is to say, if they feel they can sit at 12 and still get Reuben Bain Jr., seems unlikely, but I'm just going to throw that out there, Caleb Downs, or one of the top 2 cornerbacks, I might consider staying put. I think one of the challenges, though, for Dallas is picking behind Cincinnati. They have such similar needs. It does feel like the Bengals are likely to snap the last remaining blue-chip defensive player before the Cowboys have a chance. And they also have a win-now timeline with Dak Prescott and that offense. So I do think there's a little bit of, shall we call it, timeline asymmetry where Dallas does need to win now, whereas a team like Cleveland is desperate to just play for the future, and that might work to their advantage. The player, of course, it really is a perfect fit for exactly what they need and the biggest hole on their defense, in my mind, which is off-ball linebacker.
Another team picking ahead of Dallas that could be looking for one of those players and is in Dallas's own division is the Washington Commanders. Coming off of a down year, Jaden Daniels had kind of a sophomore slump after his monster rookie season. Some of it was injury-related, but after he was in the top 6 in total QBR and completion percentage as a rookie in 2024, he was below the league average in most major stats last year. Washington stumbled to a 5-12 record. They're picking 7th. Here's what their GM, Adam Peters, had to say about that.
The circumstances to get this pick, you never want to be in, and obviously that's that sucked. But it's a great opportunity for us. It really is. It's a great opportunity to get better and to get impactful players. So it is a big pick, but I think all of our picks are big. And every single round you can hit a home run, and so this one I think the chances are a little bit greater.
So, Field, how do the Commanders hit a home run with pick 7?
Guys, I don't think any team picking the top 10, I mean this, is better positioned than the Washington Commanders with players that I believe will be there that also fit their needs. There are 4 guys that I think would be great fits for them, but 2 in particular I think have a chance to be there. I think one of them is a lock to be there. Let's talk Jeremiah Love and Carnell Tate. I think this is the floor for Notre Dame running back Jeremiah Love, the number 2 player on my board. And Washington, unlike some of the teams ahead of them in the order, I think could justify taking a running back this high This team was playing in the NFC Championship game 2 years ago, and they have a prodigy quarterback in Jaden Daniels. Carnell Tate, meanwhile, look at their wide receiver depth chart. Yeah. It's Terry McLaurin and then a bunch of gigantic question marks. Tate, just a refined, ready-made, to me, sort of ideal number 2 wide receiver in an NFL offense. One of those two guys, I am almost positive, will be available for the Commanders. If not, it means a defensive stud is falling into their laps, Mina.
And I would be happy with both, which echoes what Field says about them being in a good position. You know, I've been critical of certain teams taking Jeremiah Love. Washington, however, I think the offensive line is in good shape, young too at certain spots and improving. The only objection I really would have would be is if one of those top 3 pass rushers were there, because it is such a glaring need. And we just talked about how much pass rushers get paid at the beginning of this show. And then that wide receiver depth is concerning to me. I mean, if Terry McLaurin misses any time, you're looking at Luke McCaffrey, Treylon Burks, Diami Brown. You know, it's an issue for them. And Tate would be such a good fit in my mind with Terry McLaurin as the X and him as the Z. The explosive receiving option for Jaden Daniels is tantalizing. So, you know, really good options, but I don't think I would criticize. I think they would both be phenomenal choices for them.
Important pick for the Commanders, who have only 2 picks in the top 140 this year. Wow. That is the fewest, yes, of any team. Coming up, Fernando Mendoza's last 14 months didn't just defy expectations, it rewrote them. Mendoza delivered a year of unforgettable comebacks and signature moments in a run that brought Indiana its first ever Heisman Trophy and national championship. Jen Latta sat down with the Hoosier signal caller to reflect on his past year.
Audio. How you doing? Good to see you again. Good to see you.
All right, so about 365 days since you announced you were coming to Indiana. What has the last year been like for you?
Taking myself back to that decision, it was a leap of faith. I'm gonna take this big swing. If I whiff, so what? But if I hit, maybe I can accomplish my dreams of making the NFL and getting drafted.
Do you have a picture of yourself from that day that you decided to come to Indiana?
The picture of me committing.
What was going through that Fernando's mind? What was he feeling?
Wow, I hope I made the right decision. Day 1 on campus, I wanted to establish myself as a leader and establish myself as one of the guys to create that connection so we could all go towards a common goal.
Us linebackers, we kind of want to see what he was made up of mentally. I would give him some crap here and there, and at first he wouldn't talk back. But after a couple of practices, he started to talk back a little bit. Once I knew that he was like ready to kind of come back and bring some fire with him, I knew we had somebody that was a little bit different.
It rose the intensity, and that intensity rolled over into summer lifts, in summer runs.
First game of the season, what do you remember about it?
First game of the season was tough. I had 0 passing touchdowns. I was trying to do too much and be the Superman. And that's not my game. My game is being the point guard, dishing it out to my receivers, handing it off to the running backs, making checks at the line. That is my game. See that play?
About the 2nd or 3rd game, you could really see it develop. And then he had a huge game against Illinois. And then he was off and running from there.
The Oregon game, Alton Stadium's not quiet. He throws a pick 6.
Down the left-hand side, it's intercepted! Touchdown, Oregon!
So it erupts. Top 10 matchup like that, I thought you'd be shaking a little bit. And I went up to him and he was like, who cares? Like I'm good. We'll go win this game.
There's definitely a little bit of bluff there. I couldn't think about, is that gonna lose this game? To that point, I'm like, control the controllables. We got this.
Fernando takes the snap, the throw to the end zone, touchdown!
Feels like no one can stop us when we know our guys locked in like that.
That's when not only are we playing efficient football, but we're also playing resilient football. And that comes with the comeback at Penn State.
We have 1:40 to go 80 yards, and we get sacked on 1st down.
I'm not gonna lie, I was a little nervous, but we all believe that we're gonna win this game. 3rd down, they called cover 0. Our offensive line blocked perfectly.
Leaping grab! Touchdown!
Wow! We needed every blade of grass there.
This is going to be just a special night for Indiana football.
I've never experienced anything like that before, playing in an NFL stadium. In warm-ups, you see the Big Ten banners hanging up, and you see Ohio State, you see Michigan. It's the same couple schools winning in the past 10 years. And at that point, you're like, okay, cool, like, let's change that.
Fernando Mendoza is on the ground on the first play of the ball game.
I looked out there and it didn't look very good. But that guy is a warrior and a lion between the white lines.
To see him walk off that field getting hit like that and then come right back in, that boy's a dog.
Absolutely incredible. This Indiana football team wins the Big Ten championship.
The most gratifying moment of this year has been after the Big Ten championship game, when all the teammates were all on the stage with the Big Ten trophy, because that's what we set our sights on. It might have been a reach for a lot of people. However, we're able to do it, and we're able to accomplish it together.
Picture this. Fernando Mendoza today is speaking to Fernando Mendoza from 1 year ago. What would you say to that young man?
I honestly don't even know if I would want to tell Fernando Mendoza from a year ago anything, because I wouldn't want anything to be different. The lows, the ups.
The winner is Fernando Mendoza.
Mendoza, the snap, looking left, fires end zone, touchdown, Indiana!
The Hoosiers hammer Alabama.
Snap to Mendoza, fires, touchdown.
Number 5 for Mendoza. The Indiana Hoosiers advance to their first ever national championship game.
I wouldn't want to give him any spoilers.
Still ahead on NFL Live, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price turned Notre Dame's backfield into a problem last season. Could that dynamic duo hear both of it now for some In Case You Missed It, where we get you caught up on some of the stuff people around the league have been saying this week? We're going to start with new Patriots safety Kevin Byard making his recruiting pitch for former teammate A.J. Brown.
So I'm going to be the first one to say, AJ, I would love for you to come join us in the business. Trust me, I see the rumors. I see everything
That's your
going
camera
down.
right there.
That's my camera.
Yeah, there you go.
AJ Brown. Come on to New England, buddy. But no, like honestly, I don't really know how it's going to go down. I don't really know what's going to happen. But like I said, I would love to get the game back together, man. Come on to New England, try to help us win a Super Bowl. He's a phenomenal player. And I think it's just one of those deals. Obviously, down year last year, whatever it may be, but I've seen the work that he's putting in this offseason. AJ is ready to go. So I'm hoping that it kind of works out, but we'll see.
Shefty, Byard and A.J. Brown were teammates in Tennessee. Is Byard going to get his wish?
Well, Dan, I don't think Kevin Byard needs to recruit A.J. Brown to get him to want to come to New England. My sense is that A.J. Brown would be very content if he wound up in New England here somehow, some way. We continue to wait to see if there's a trade. My understanding is the trade is on the table. It remains on the table. It is certainly not out of the question. And Kevin Byard may get his wish by the end of the summer.
To Kansas City now, where Chiefs general manager Brett Veach thinks the fans may be in for a lot of action on the first night of the NFL draft.
I think that the fans will be in for a treat next Thursday, because I think that, you know, the grades are going to be so close from some of these tackles and DNs and other receivers that a lot of these guys that are mocked high may go a little lower, and a lot of these guys that are getting mocked a little lower may go a little higher, because I think they're so close this year. I think it should be an entertaining night, and look, probably be a lot of trades. And I think that's what a draft like this, when you don't have, you know, 2 or 3 franchise quarterbacks and, you know, a Will Anderson or a Myles Garrett, I think it does lend itself to open up to a lot of fun and a lot of excitement.
Field, you got that final mock draft of yours coming next week. Are there going to be a bunch of trades in it?
I don't know, Graz, and not because I don't buy what Brett Veach is saying to us right now. More so, it's just harder to project trades when you're not actually the one trying to execute said trades. I do believe there will be one trade, though. It'll involve a team moving up into the first round to select Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson. In case you missed it, pretty much everybody has expected that to be Arizona, so there's a chance my trade will involve the Arizona Cardinals as well.
Keep an eye out for that. We go to South Bend, Indiana now, where running back Jadarian Price recently spoke about himself and Notre Dame teammate Jeremiah Love possibly being the top 2 running backs entering the draft. Mina, we've heard a lot about Jeremiah Love. Is his teammate Jadarian Price also worthy of a first-round pick?
Jadarian Price is my RB2 in this class. The word I use to describe him is explosive, one cut, and he's gone. If you give him a runway, it is like watching a jet plane take off. That said, when we talk about taking backs in the first round, for me, it also is about opportunity cost. And if I look at a team like Seattle at the end, cornerback, I think, might be more important. Houston is another team that needs a running back, but they also need interior offensive line. So as far as where Price will end up going, a lot of it has to do with which teams need other positions and whether or not they need those positions more.
What do you think, Field? Do you see him going round one?
I have a round 2 grade on Jadarian Price, an early round 2 grade. But I think for me, in order to justify a running back going in the first round, and we're talking about one that's going to go potentially in the first 7 picks in Jeremiah Love, you need to be a true dual threat running back. You need to have, to me, a proven resume that you can really impact the passing game as well. Jeremiah Love is by far the best pass. Have Jeremiah Love. Right. How much do you really have to bother throwing it to the football to the backup running back on your roster? That being said, my projection for Jadarian Price is not some game-changing running back. So could I see him sneaking into the back of round 1? Only because Seattle really looms large at 32. I think based off value, though, I'd be much more comfortable with him going somewhere in round 2.
What about you, Adam? What are you hearing on the Notre Dame backs?
There are some people that really like him. They feel like he's the best running back in the class. Now, Jeremiah Love is the best offensive weapon in this class, but I've had a couple of coaches tell me that they think Jadarian Price is the best running back in this class. And it doesn't mean that he will go in the first round. I think we could start to hear his name called right around Seattle's turn at 32 if the Seahawks decided to go in that direction. But that would be the range that I would start looking for him in. At that point in time, there are some people that like him. Obviously, didn't catch a lot of passes. But Notre Dame's attack seemed to shift when they had one of those backs in the game, whether it was Price or whether it was in Love. And so I think there's some teams that have some questions about what it would be like if Price played in the same type of attack that Love did, and Love played in the same type of attack that Price did. But there are some people that truly, really like Jadarian Price in this draft.
Yeah, there's a little bit of speculation involved. Field, I think, made a great point. Yes, he didn't catch a lot of passes, but he was playing with Jeremiah Love, so he wasn't asked to catch a lot of passes. He does have, in my mind, the athletic tools that suggest he is capable of more, capable of greater workload. I do think also the reason why I would be comfortable with him going not first round, but second is I do have a drop-off to the next tier of backs. There's guys I really like. Jonah Coleman from Washington, for example, is a great power running back, but he doesn't give you the explosivity that Jadarian Price does. So there is a big delta for me between those two backs that would justify a team taking him in the second round. First round, I just have trouble getting to.
Yeah, last year we heard about how deep the running back class was in the draft. Maybe not quite the same kind of situation for the backs this year. We have time for one more thing before we go, and it is a big, special shout-out to Mina Kimes, who will be on Celebrity Jeopardy All-Stars tonight at 8 Eastern on ABC.